So I thought a good tutorial idea would be a Fox Stevenson tutorial. We're actually lucky enough to be joined here today by an expert in Fox Stevenson music. How do we make Fox Stevenson music? It's a fox and his name's Fox Stevenson and oh god. Alright, so we have our Fox Stevenson drum and bass project right here. You'll notice that we're going for a 172, which is pretty typical drum and bass tempo. I know I could get crucified for not having it at 174, but you know, I'm a risk taker. So I start the intro just how I usually do, with a generic impact. And then I started adding some tonal ambience, and I just like to do this, just get a few samples and just chuck it in the background. It really helps to fill out the mix. I also have a downlifter. We're just sort of creating a bit of atmosphere here. I also had some hi-hat hits just to give a bit of rhythm, and then I'm filtering in my vocals. It says FX vocals here. That's just because I've made a full different vocal wave file from my acapella to use as effects, so I can just chuck on reverb and filters and just do what I want with it, cut it up and distort it and whatever. So I've taken a piece out of the acapella there, and I've automated some wet reverb on it. I've pulled the dry down and also filtered out the high end of it to keep it clean and sort of in the background. I've done the same with my drop melody, and this is filtering in like how the vocals are. So I've just cut a little bit of the drop melody, chucked it in there, puts heaps of reverb on it, and just sits nicely in the background there and sort of teases what the rest of the song is going to be like. As we move towards the verse where the vocals and sort of the drums start coming in, I filter in my drums with EQ on the high and the lows, and that sounds like this. So I have my verse drums into a verse drum bus, as you can see here. The filter is just a high pass, a low pass, just filtering out. So that's bringing in the frequencies, and it's just sort of acting as a nice transition to get into the drums, so the drums aren't sort of just coming out of nowhere. And I also added a little riser to transition to the verse as well. As we hit the verse, of course, I just put a nice exhaust there, sort of cymbal, and then our drums open up fully, and we have a pretty typical drum bass drum loop, just playing a drum bass loop. Drum loop. Yep. So of course we got kicks in there. They're sort of acoustic sounding because you don't want your drums to be hitting too hard in the verse. You want to save that for the drop later on. Got a snare. Again, sort of acoustic sounding. Some rides and shakers, or hi-hats and shakers. I then have a verse bass, which is going to be playing the bass pattern for the rest of the track. And that's a layer of two sounds. One is just a classic 80s bass from the stock FL Studio instruments. And I layered that with a sub. I also added a couple guitar loops, one's high and one's low. So I've just taken the exact same sample and put one at the octave I like, and then pitched the other one right up. So they sound like this. You hear that in a lot of Fox Stevenson songs, sort of a guitar playing in the background. And as I said, one is sort of lower, and then the other is pitched up. And they both have a bit of Camel Crusher to distort them, some stereo enhancer, a little bit of reverb, and they're much the same on both. The last part of the verse was to add an acapella, and I went for a Fox Stevenson one. You can get this on the Disciple YouTube and SoundCloud. They've got it there as a download link. Fox Stevenson, he obviously sings in a lot of his tracks, so I had to go with a Fox Stevenson acapella to really make this real.
I think it's time we talked about love. Yeah, I don't even know what I am anymore. Just pack it in and give it all up. I don't know.
So I just kept that dry. I didn't want to do anything to it really. Manipulated it a bit just to get the formant right. I think I pitched it up 2, so I just pulled the formant down 2 to even that out and make it sound nice again. As we start the build up, our acapella, it's still going hard, it's still singing away. I left my bass in there, put in the downlifter again, and just kept the low of the guitar playing. Also we have our ambience, of course, and then I just went back to the hi-hat hit from the intro. As we finish this sort of chill bit of the intro, I filter in my drums again, like we did in the intro. And then the drums come in, fully unfiltered again, playing the drum bass loop until we get to the end where we sort of make a bit of typical build-up drum pattern. We have the guitars playing the whole way up. The ambience, of course, the bass is playing, and the vocals going right up to the drop.
Forgive me, I gotta go.
I added some beefy rises to say that this is a build-up, and also I added some claps, which adds a bit more energy to the build up. You know, whenever you hear claps, you know something's coming. And the last thing I did was filter in my drop melody and the drop bass without adding any sub or really adding anything too crazy. It's just sort of filtering in behind the rest of the verse elements and sort of, you know, teasing the drop. So one of the most important parts to getting a Fox Stevenson drum and bass track right is to get some drums that slap. And so I've just laid out a nice drum and bass pattern here. Add some hi-hats to that. More hi-hats or rides. And then I also added a hi-hat loop, which adds a bit more high ends as well. And what I've gone and done to get these drums to really slap is I've put them into a drum bus. So this is pretty easy. Select your drums in the mixer like I have here, and then just right click over here, route to this track only, and this is the drum bus. So what I have here on the drum bus is this cool new plugin that Cymatics has sent over to me. It's called Diablo. This is just the free version. It's just got 2 knobs. The paid version has a lot more features that can really change your drums up. But what this is really effective for is just making your drums hit. And they hit, man. So I'm going to turn it off, play the drums. I mean, good. Good samples. Sounds good. Turn this bad boy on, and boy, they punch. For real, easy to use. Pull up the punch, pull up the clip, and it's just going to make your drums just push through that much harder in the mix. They're just really going to slap. What I really like about it is in the context of the mix, it just makes them just cut through them much better and just makes your drums really stand out. So the next essential step for the Fox Stevenson drum and bass is a catchy, cool, distorted melody. So I made these sounds. They're not too hard to recreate. This one's just a FM wave and a squelchy FM, and added a bit of FM from B, turned this level down, added a comb filter, and then we just add a bit of hyper for a bit of width, distort it, compress it, and then add an all pass filter. So the filters are probably, I would say, the most important part of this. Just play around with combs and all pass and reverb filters, and eventually you'll find something that's making your sound that really dirty, medley sound that Fox Stevenson gets. The other layer is just sort of a similar play around, just distort, bass dropper here, thin and thick, some more FM, another comb filter, some more hyper, dimension, and a reverb filter, and that's really all it is. You just gotta play around with your filters, as I said. I'll put those presets in the description, so download them, have a play with them, see what they're all about. In the post-processing side, I'm just EQing all the dirty out of it, camel crushing it, distorting, sausage fattener of course, and 2 OTTs apparently. Some more EQ on the second one, camel crusher, sausage fattener, OTT, the same again. I just like making my sounds fat, and those plugins are the best at doing it. Halfway through the drop, we drop down an octave, the melody plays down an octave, the bass will stay the same, but that sounds a bit like this. The next step is to get a nice fat bass. These are hitting each time the melody hits, but it's just playing the A sharp, F, C, G chord progression. So the bass is made up of a FM sort of bass. I made this sort of the same way I made the melodies, just sort of playing around with FM things and playing with filter. It's got a reverb on there, so it's just sort of the same construction. The second bass layer is just sort of a filtered mid bass, and then of course we have a fat sub there. Halfway through the drop we just have the vocals coming in with a bit of distortion on them, and in the mid drop fill I cut the drums and put this EQ filter on the drop melody as it pitches down one. This filter is just cutting the lows, cutting the highs, and that just makes it feel a bit cheap and like a video game coming out of a crusty radio or something. Once we finish our pitch down melody, we come into some vocals and bass, and we add our guitar back. We are keeping our hard hitting drums because this is still the drop, but we're just adding vocals. So what I've done with the second drop bass here is I've just added notes to it, so it's just playing like bum 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 bum. And I have a bit of tape stop on there using this glitch plugin, which is just sort of making that womp sound at the end of each chord. And also I have an EQ filter which is just cutting out a lot of that high end to sort of clean up the bass and make it fit better with the guitar and vocals.
Stockholm syndrome, and if I don't leave, I'll never know. Forgive me, I've gotta go.
Add our ambience back.
Stockholm syndrome, and if I don't leave.
Then we have our hard-hitting drop drums playing in there also, and that's sort of a nice hard-hitting melodic sort of vocal part of the drop.
Stockholm syndrome, and if I don't leave.
And now I think we've successfully recreated a Fox Stevenson drop. I just want to say no foxes or stuffed fox animals were harmed in the making of this.
Yeah, I don't even know what I am anymore. Just pack it in and give it all up. I don't know. She told me she I've gotta go. She says she needs bright lights and new sounds, long nights in frontier towns. Forgive me, I gotta go.